So, welcome to this session. How are you doing today? It's enthusiastic for a change. Normally it's like, okay. How are you doing? Good? Yeah. Oh, great. Lovely live crowd. So, I want to set your expectations on this talk. If you are... I'll give you a little bit about the agenda. If you are here to learn something, you've got the wrong room. There's like 4 or 5 parallel sessions to this. There's one on NoSQL and other stuff. So if you're here for anything technical, please leave now, because it is not the right session for you. This session is just about me ranting, to be quite honest with you. And who's me? Well, I'm a developer, and I work for a company called JetBrains. How many of you have heard of JetBrains? Okay, good. So I always make a deal when I give this talk. I'm like, if you enjoyed the talk, great, cheer on JetBrains. If you did not like the talk, please don't hold it against JetBrains, okay? I assume everyone here does speak English, right? Anybody does not speak English? Because I can do this in French as well if you want. No, I'm kidding. I can do it in Spanish if you want. Oh, I shouldn't have mentioned Spain, should I? It's okay? Okay. So, today I'm not a developer. Today I'm going to be someone that's pretty pissed off, and that's my baby. And he was really mad at me. He actually scratched my forehead the other day. But it's not about me. This is about you guys, okay? And I know that you guys are... I mean, everybody here is a developer, yes? Everybody? Is there anyone that... God, I've never had such a live crowd. You should see Sweden. The Swedes are just like... every time you're like, can have someone come in and please check if they're still alive? Any Swedish here? I always have to... I keep forgetting to check first before asking that question. So I'm going to talk about you guys, developers, and I'm sure that you know this guy. I do a lot of stuff in the Microsoft community, and then I often forget to update when I come to the Java community. I don't think you've got a person that's equivalent to this. Well, we'll just call him this guy. Do you? No, I don't think so. Anyway, and I want to talk about developers because I think that overall, to a certain sense, we seem to have lost a little bit of focus on what we're doing. I think that we're kind of deviating away oftentimes from things that are important. And, if you think about developers, some of you may think that we're a misunderstood society. Who would agree with that statement? I mean, honestly, they don't understand us, right? Really. I mean, and I say us because I'm a developer as well. And they don't understand us. And I was asking some time ago, give me your definition of developers. And a friend of mine said, yeah, we're a bunch of insecure bandwagon jumping divas with short attention spans. And I think that's pretty accurate. Who thinks that that is accurate? See, very few people think that's accurate. Why? Because you're developers. That's exactly the reason why you think it's inaccurate. Do you remember these guys? No? This is my section of the talk to see how old I am in comparison to you. Right? And every time I do this talk, I get older, and the new developers come in and become younger. It was like a friend of mine was saying today, actually, on Twitter, is like, why in the hell would we want to teach kids how to program? As if we don't even have enough competition as it stands now, that we want new people to come on board. Now, when you get to a certain age, you start to forget things. That whole thing about experience accumulates is bull. But these guys were developers. This is a developer. This is the definition of a developer seen from the eyes of the sales department at JetBrains. A guy did a presentation. He said, I want to talk about developers. And he puts this picture up. I don't look like this anymore. I used to, but I didn't. This guy is a developer. This guy is a developer. This is an actual movie about those two guys. It's a real movie. If you go to YouTube and you look this up, it's a real movie about Erlang. Right? You don't know if it's a movie or it's a Monty Python sketch. It is a movie. Right? And you imagine that this was going on and people would watch this movie and say, do I really want to be one of these? Just watch the movie. It's horrendous. Who knows this guy? Right. So I am very, very old. This is a movie back in the old days. It was called Revenge of the Nerds. Anybody seen that movie? Yeah, so there's two people that are old as me. And this guy was like the main character. He was a nerd. Back then it was bad to be a nerd. Today it's great, right? We're ruling the world today, aren't we? I mean, you know this other nerd, right? Yeah, we don't like him. No, we don't mind him. Or as his real self. But I want to talk about the kind of the average developer. Not in abilities, but the average developer. And these are a bunch of friends of mine and some people that responded to my call out to, oh, send me a picture of yourself if you're a developer. You see, we tend to categorize developers. So I'm going to categorize developers. First of all, we have the enterprise developers, right? Who's enterprise developer here? Very, very self-confident crowd. I like that. Normally when you say enterprise developer, they're like, no, that's not me. Why? Because that's like the plain vanilla. That's like going to an ice cream store and saying, what flavor do you want? Vanilla, right? It's very, very, very boring. As enterprise developers, we're very, very boring. Because nowadays, you have to be a hipster, okay? If you actually go to Wikipedia, this is what a hipster looks like. And I've seen quite a few hipsters around here today. So nowadays, it's like those two types of categories of developers. The enterprise guys, the really boring ones, and the hipsters, the ones that are doing the cool things, right? Then there is this other thing called SharePoint. How many of you have heard of SharePoint? Right. That's a Microsoft technology. All you do is lists. I mean, all you do is just integrate with lists. And a friend of mine, he doesn't call himself a developer, he calls himself a debugger. He says, I'm a SharePoint debugger. But the good thing about that is that you get really, really rich. Because it's such a horrible thing to work with that nobody wants to do it. So if you're ever like, you forget about all this and you're like, oh, I'm sick of it, I just want to get stinking rich, become a SharePoint debugger. It'll work out for you. Seriously, you make good money. Now, Microsoft has caught on to this hipster thing, right? If you go to the Microsoft website, back a couple of months ago, this was the website of Azure. It was a guy with a hat, blue, and what looks like kind of a MacBook, but isn't a MacBook because they couldn't go that far. And they said, right, now that's it. We're out of this enterprise business. We're jumping onto the hipster bandwagon. Of course, in my space, this goes even further, right? Between the enterprise and the hipsters, we get other types of developers. We get the ninja developer. People categorize themselves as ninjas. They say, I'm a ninja. Right? I want a ninja. I want. How many ninja developers are going to come to work for me? Right? Imagine that, like that kind of job categorization in some other thing, like plumbers. I'm a ninja plumber, or I'm a ninja doctor, or we're looking for a ninja secretary. I mean, who in their right mind would actually read that and say, "What the hell are these people on about?" And yet we think it's cool. And we even go further and we ask for rockstar developers. Who's a rockstar developer? Yay! Yeah. Of course, some of that has been brought about not by ourselves, but by our surroundings, right? I mean, how many of you are on Twitter? Right. Twitter is good, right? Twitter is good. Who agrees Twitter is good? Twitter is great for work. Yes? Come on, let's start with that excuse. Twitter has the phases of like, I'm going to go on Twitter and see what this is about. Oh, this is boring. And you start, right? You start with your Twitter climb. You get on board, you sign up, and you're like, ooh, I just want to check out this Twitter thing. Oh, look, my friends are following me because they're on Twitter, so they know I've joined. Great. I'll get a couple of retweets that Joe has joined Twitter. Great. Oh, look, wow, I'm climbing 30, 40, 100, 200 people. I got 1,000 people on Twitter following me. This is amazing. I mean, shit, I must be a really interesting person. It hits 20,000. Oh, wow. That's it. I am, like, people look up to me. People really are just following me to see what I have to say. It definitely must mean that I am very, very interesting, right? I must have really profound things that I am saying that people listen to. It surely must be that. Now, I've not updated this in a while. I think right now it's at around 450,000 followers. This is an account that just goes bong, right? Every hour it goes bong, and if it's 2 o'clock, it'll say bong, bong, and if it's 3 o'clock, it'll say bong, bong, bong. I showed this to a friend a couple of months ago, and he's like, oh, no, you're kidding me. There's no such account. I'm like, okay, wait. I said, Twitter, go to Google and search Twitter Big Ben Clock. He finds the account. You know what he did? He followed it. I was thinking the other day, I thought, look at this. If it's 4 o'clock, it's bong, 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 bong. Maybe I should make a version that's Central European time. Because this is UK time, right? So yeah, put that into perspective when you look at your follow account. Okay? And if you don't like that, there are other people that also have a bunch of Twitter followers, like the feral pigeon or the office chair or the common squirrel. They must have very interesting things to say too. So yeah, we've taken this rock star and I'm famous kind of thing a little bit too far. In fact, but every time we take something too far, what can you possibly expect? Well, of course, Microsoft takes it to the next step, right? They've come out with a show which is called The Next Microsoft Employee. It's joining Microsoft. Who's going to qualify to be the next Microsoft employee? This is like a Big Brother, but working for Microsoft kind of thing. As if that wasn't bad enough. But the point is that, you know, with all this, we start to lose focus a little bit, that it's not about us, right? We start to focus on things that we start to think, oh, I must be like a genius. But it's not about us. And yet we think, I should make all the right decisions. But anyway, that's all good fun. I mean, I just wanted to, you know, not everyone here thinks that they're a rock star or a ninja developer, although I used to think I was a ninja developer. But we do it because we're passionate about our job, right? I mean, who is passionate about their job? Right. How many of you are in this business for the money? No, that's SharePoint you should go to. The majority of people here are here because they love what they do. They're passionate. They enjoy their job. And because you care, right? You all care about what you do, and that's one of the important things, to care about what you do. And back in the old days, we used to do things, right? Remember we used to do things? We used to ship software. We used to get things done. About 10 years ago, they came out with this thing, which was called the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. How many of you have read this? How many of you know it by heart? Okay. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. I'm not going to go through this. I'm just going to go on this guy over here. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. You all know that, right? You know what it means, no? Okay, if it's going to be a contest of who's going to speak louder. So, let's take a look at that. There is Scrum. Who's heard of Scrum? Right. Scrum. Who practices Scrum? Who is really successful with Scrum? Hey, it's funny, isn't it? And when they came to you and they said, waterfall sucks, do Scrum, everyone's like, this sounds so awesome. Let's do it, right? Half of the room puts up their hand, and then 3 people are like, okay, I'm kind of successful, and I don't know. It's like, looking at the other guy, is he raising his hand? No. So, for those of you that don't know what Scrum is a process that says, basically, I work in iterations. I take a 2 or 4 week iteration, and I start to go through my series of backlog items, and I plan out what I'm going to do in these 2 week iterations, and then I'm going to deliver what I do to the customer at the end of the day, right? That is the idea with Scrum. So one day of that iteration, let's say you have a week iteration, the first day you do the Scrum planning. Everyone does Scrum planning, right? Backlog planning, get your items out of the backlog, say what you're going to work on, and then you plan that out for 4 days. You use story points, you use story cards, whatever you want. You plan it out for 4 days, and then you start to work on it. And it all works great. And then the last day, you have what's called a retrospective, which is, let's see how I screwed up, right? In another way, that's what's called a retrospective. So basically, you take 1 day away for planning, 1 day away for seeing where you screwed up, and you got 3 days to work. And of course, in those 3 days, something happens. What? Your boss comes in and says, oh, no, you can't do this, you got to do something else. But you're going to disrupt my planning. What? You're going to disrupt it. I've planned everything out. Well, tough. Okay. Or your boss is really, really, nice guy, and he won't come in, but there's a bug that appears, a critical bug. Oh, what do I do now? Should we put this bug as part of the sprint, or should we leave space for bugs in the sprint, or should we cancel the sprint, or what should we do? And then, of course, there's like another day that you spend debating what you should do over this bug. And you kind of find that Scrum really isn't that silver bullet that they promised. It doesn't really work that well, right? Do you know why that is? Do you know why Scrum doesn't work? It's very simple. Because you're not certified. If you were certified, if you go on a 2-day Scrum course and you become a Scrum certified master in 2 days, you become a master, then Scrum works. But seriously, that's not the issue, right? One of the issues that they say with Scrum is that you're time boxed. You're stuck in this 2-week iteration or 1-week iteration, and you're trying to somehow fit everything in, and you've got this pressure that's coming in from the outside. So we've done away with Scrum. Now we're on to this other thing called Lean. And Lean is saying, don't plan this iteration out, just pull stuff. Just do things, and as you do things, pull them. That's it. It's all cool. It's all great. You get this constant flow of things coming in, and it all works great. And then we have these things called the Kanban boards, right? Who's got a Kanban board? Right. Here's a Kanban board if you don't know what it is. Everyone's got a Kanban board. There are people now writing blog posts how they run their family using Kanban boards, right? I'm like, okay, I should add my mother to the Kanban board as well. Yeah, of course. In fact, what is funny is that when I used to do a Scrum training, I know, shame on me, and I went to a customer, and I told him about Scrum, and we spent about a week together. And I said, okay, this is Scrum, blah, 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 and let's look at your code. Your code needs unit testing, it needs continuous integration, you've got to put this in place, put that in place, put that in place. I go back after a month, right? How are you doing? Oh, great, look at this. Takes me to and I'm not kidding you, he takes me to a room where he's got little Post-its with little magnets stuck up on the wall, right, holding the Post-its, because everyone knows the Post-its fall. And the magnets, guess what they have? The company logo. I'm like, brilliant, great. He's like, not only that, look at this. He pulls out a pack of planning poker cards with the company logo. I'm like, oh, right, cool. So how's it working out? Great. So how's the code looking? Well, we're not really increased in speed. We haven't really improved in that area. But we do have our stand-ups, and we do have our sprint planning and all that. Like, okay, so, but what about the unit testing, better design, putting all that? Well, we kind of left that for later. We first want to get this whole thingy put in place, the process put in place, and then concentrate on the code, right? And everybody knows that that doesn't work. But people start to become obsessed about the process and forgetting some of the other things that come with the process. And people start to create their own Kanban boards, their own software, their own everything, and we start to focus on, oh, the problem isn't the process. It's not even that we don't have proper code or unit tests. No, the problem is we don't have the right software in place. I mean, we sell a software called UTrack, right? Everyone would come and evaluate it and say, oh, what issue management, does it have support for Agile methodologies? No. I don't want it then. Okay, so now we've added a board. We made a really big button there, and we called it Agile Board. Everyone's like, ooh, cool. Now you support Agile. Yes. Now you can run your life in an Agile way because you got a button that says Agile. But that's what it's been reduced to. I mean, I saw an example one time of a company that had you had a board where they would assign a task. It would print out in a printer, they would stick it on the board, and they had a camera focusing on the board. And as they would move the task across the board, the camera would capture the image, send it over the wire, print out a copy in another remote team location for them to print it out and move it across the board. This is where we've completely lost focus, right? And people say, wow, this is such innovative technology. Are you kidding me? A printer and a... And when things don't work, we set up societies. And we say, yes, we can ban. Of course, this was before the whole Obama fiasco of not really doing what he said he was going to do. But anyway. But you know, I was thinking, I said, well, let's look at this. Scrum takes away the kind of time boxing. But then we hear a lot of complaints about people not doing their stuff because they're not subjected to a restriction, right? I mean, you've all heard that, and Neil Ford, a friend of mine, has a very good talk on this, which is basically the more restrictions you have, it enhances creativity. But I was thinking that, I mean, how many of you work at home or work in an office? Right, so basically 3 people work either at home or in an office. The rest of you, I don't have no clue where you work. Okay? How many of you have trouble every day kind of concentrating? Right. Because between Twitter, Hacker News, Facebook, Google+, YouTube, it's really hard to concentrate, right? Really hard. Really hard. And then you have the issue with the emails, right? And you have the Skype, and then you have the Messenger, and you have the ICQ. Yes, in JetBrains there are people still using ICQ. I know, it's sad, but anyway. And you're constantly interrupted. So there is this thing that they came up with, which is called the Pomodoro technique. How many of you know the Pomodoro technique? Right. So the cool thing about this Pomodoro technique is that basically there's a timer, right? Which is a tomato. And you turn this timer and you put it up to 25 minutes, for example, and what it does, it says to you, right, during these 25 minutes, do not interrupt yourself. Do not let anything from outside interrupt you. Get your work done. Right? An egg timer. Basically, timing your 25 minutes, kind of slots of concentration, of not being interrupted by external factors. Now, this technique is not actually that new, if you think about it. And many, many, many years ago, we used to have another technique. And oh yeah, I remember what it's called. It's called discipline. I don't know if you've heard of it. Right? So, this kind of helps you concentrate. And it helps you in such a way that, in fact, it doesn't stop here. It allows you to become certified. Right? It's about 2,000 euros or something like that, and you can become a certified Pomodoro master. Once you become certified, you can join the Pomodoro world, where you can be a user, reporter, writer, speaker, angel, master, player, or team. This is again like, really? Are we chasing the next silver bullet? Are we trying to put the blame on something else? Do we really need someone to come and teach us how to concentrate for 25 minutes and turn an egg timer and then become certified in it? And join a world of people that know how to twist egg timers? I bet your mothers are honorary members of them, but not for this reason. But I said, look, from one side we bitch and moan about Scrum and how it like locks us into an iteration and it doesn't allow us to have that freedom. From the other side, we have this thing called a Pomodoro, which we're consciously locking ourselves into a time box so that we're more efficient. So what could I do if I put Scrum and Pomodoro together? What could we come up with? Give me a name. Scrumadoro, too late. Someone already has. Now, what you can do is become the first person that offers certification on it. I don't know you, but I kind of feel like we really have lost it. And we buy into this nonsense time after time after time. And we're good developers. So what do we do if it doesn't work? We create a framework. Here's one. I'm not even going to stop on that slide. That's a framework for Agile methodology. Yeah. Here's the worst part. We've actually infected others. We now have marketers doing Agile. How many of you remember the saying that you can't compare software with construction? Right? Building software is not the same as building a bridge. You've heard that millions of times, right? Well, look at this. Now we got construction companies becoming Agile. And at some point, this whole Agile thing started to actually divorce with software. Back in a conference in 2010, there was a conference called Agile, which is the biggest conference in the US on Agile, the Agile Alliance. And they had a conference, and at that conference, people started to moan, among other people, Uncle Bob, saying that there is absolutely no content on code. We have a conference on Agile, which originated and still is in the software industry, and there was no sessions about code. Like 3% sessions about code. It was all about process, and tools, and process, and individuals thrown in, and interactions, not that much, and no code. There was like 4 or 5 sessions out of 100, 200 sessions on actual code, on actual unit testing, on actual design principles, on continuous integration, on all of these things. There was hardly any sessions about code. It started to divide. And we've completely lost the plot to what Agile was meant to bring. It's still about software. But we know about software. We know about craftsmanship, right? Because we care about our code. We care about clean code. We care about unit testing. We care about test-driven development. How many of you do test-driven development? Well, you should all do test-driven development. If you don't do test-driven development, you're doing it wrong. Yeah, you've not heard that lately? Of course you have. We start to have these wars on, are you applying single responsibility principle? No. Shame on you. Did you just check in some code that violated open-close principle? Yes. You should be burned to the stake. And you should be banned from the version control for 6 months. You do not check this kind of code in. And we go on with these wars of whether we should apply a principle and not apply a principle, or should we check in this code with that principle? Well, why isn't this delivered? Well, I've been debating over 6 months of where to draw the line on single responsibility, you see. And I don't know if this class has too many things or not. And then we take it to the testing acronym, test-driven development, acceptance test-driven development. What is that? Well, that is a test for the customer to accept the software. Really? What is test-driven development then? I don't know, I don't do it. Oh, okay. Behavior-driven development. What is that? It's about the behavior. Because the rest of the system does what? And the worst part is the framework-driven development, which is, oh gosh, I got this idea of BDD. It's fantastic. What is BDD? Well, you see, you know unit testing? Normally it kind of says like assert. Yeah. Well, BDD testing framework says should. Oh, cool. So I've created a new framework. Really? Yeah. Why? Well, I thought instead of should, it would be nicer to say, it would be great if it would. And then you get frameworks where it's like a flag. Do you do TDD or BDD? Set this flag. That is nonsense. Or that's a political correct term for saying that is bullshit, right? But what happens is that we drag this crap along without really understanding what things are about. Behavior-driven development was about communication. It was about asking the right questions. It was about talking to the customer. It was about understanding their needs. It was about focusing on the specifications of the system versus just isolated tests without knowledge of what the customer wants. It was never about keywords, right? And then people read something and they're like, oh, I'm going to go and use this, and then we push this over to different environments and different languages. And we lose focus to the point that there are websites that just says, I don't know if you've seen this website, right? We're sick of it all, right? Now, this is extreme, but you kind of understand why the guy is fed up with all this. Let's talk about interactions. Communication is a prerequisite to interaction. Would you agree with that? No. I heard a no. It's like, I like to communicate, but just don't put me in front of people. Communication is key. We constantly hear people say, communication is key. There are only two problems in software development, and it's communication. What exactly are you doing to improve your communication? What are you doing apart from saying communication is key? Who are you communicating with? Well, I communicate with my team members. What are they? Developers. Okay, good. There's a QA guy on there as well. Huh. He doesn't understand us. Right. No wonder. Okay. Who else do you communicate with? My spouse. She's not a developer. I wish she would understand me. It would be so cool. Right. We developers really, we think logically. I mean, you know that joke, which I always forget, but it's the wife says to the husband, go to the store and buy bread. And if they have eggs, buy a dozen. The guy comes back with a dozen loaf of bread, right? Because we think in logical ways. We try to analyze everything to say, okay, this is logical. We kind of lose the empathy. We kind of lose the stepping back and saying, you know what, maybe I should just let go. Maybe I don't have to prove my point. I mean, there is, by and large, an acceptance that we are introverts. Yes? We are not introverts, actually. That's a myth, because we love to communicate. If not, go to Hacker News. You can see communication on Hacker News. Here's a sample. These are just threads about someone forgetting to put a semicolon on a single line in a JavaScript file. We beat the topic to death, to the point that nobody will just stop. Somebody has to prove their point. I got to be the last man or woman standing and say, this comment is the one that kills it all. Right? We just don't know when to stop. We love communicating. We love it. What we hate is small talk. Right? And I've given this talk, too many times now to remember. But the first time I gave it, a friend of mine comes to me afterwards, and he said, when I saw that slide, I was wondering, what the hell do you have against the language small talk? Which kind of proves the point, right? Outside of our scope, we just don't go anywhere. So you kind of wonder, are you comprehensible? Is the arguments you have with your team members or your wife or your spouse or your husband or your colleagues, is it because you've forgotten to a certain point how to communicate? Does this incomprehension actually reflect on your work? We strive so much about trying to prevent complex code and make it readable, and yet, how do we know if we don't know how well we're expressing ourselves? Does it influence your user interface? It does ours. Here's a sample of UTrack. Do you know what that is? We have UTrack and we've got another software called TeamCity, and what happens is that UTrack polls TeamCity every X minutes, right? So that is the dialog box to configure how frequently you want TeamCity to be polled. And I ping the developer, I'm like, Dimitri, what's that? He's like, that's the frequency. I'm like, no, it's not, it's a bunch of characters. He's like, well, I said, where's the spin button? He's like, no, that's a Quartz Java doc. I'm like, huh? So I click the link. So I click the link, and it takes me to this page that looks somewhat like Sprague expressions or whatever. And I'm like, what the hell is this? He's like, well, you can put in anything you want. I'm like, no. I don't need to read 10 pages to figure out how to put 10 minutes. He's like, well, it's very flexible. No shit. Has anyone ever used it? No. They just leave the default on. But the problem is that he doesn't see it that way until I, bashed him. He doesn't see that. It's like, this is the most flexible thing we have, right? And I vouch to go to my grave not having to learn regular expression because life is too short, right? And nowadays with Google, I just Google it. And then we get angry and we say it one and time again, and then we get these frustrations appearing in our actual software products. This is a beauty. Any IBM folks here? No? Okay. But the problem is that this leads to things like saying, oh, I don't like speaking to customers. I don't understand customers. I don't like speaking to my teammate. I don't need stupid customers. Just leave me alone. Just let me do my stuff. I'm a great coder. Just let me do my stuff. And fine, you don't want to speak to team members? You think that's a good idea? It's not. But okay, what about customers? Because you see, when you start to disconnect from customers, when you start to not be able to communicate with customers and get frustrated when you're talking to customers, it starts to become dangerous. You know why? Because you start to lose revenue. And the problem is that the vast majority of us as developers, we disconnect with the revenue. Unless you're a freelancer, you work in a company, if there's a bug, do they cut a slice of your paycheck? Not really. If you've developed a really cool feature that nobody uses, do they cut a slice of your paycheck? Not really. Because we start to disconnect from where the revenue comes. And we start to get into our own little world thinking that, oh, I'm working on something awesome that everyone's going to use, without really talking to the customers, without really thinking if what I'm going to do is actually of any value. And that happens. And I've seen it time and time again happen. For quite a while now at JetBrains, we send out newsletters, and in that newsletter, we actually print out numbers, figures of how well products are doing, how much they're selling. And we're about 350 people, and everybody now knows it. Because you should be aware of your revenue. You should be aware of your customers. And sometimes we seem to forget that. We start to lose focus and start to concentrate on the little details, on the code, on the frameworks, on things that don't matter so much. And that leads us to knowledge-driven design, or as my friend calls it, CV-driven design. Or the Church of Technology fashion. There's a very good YouTube video of someone comparing Apache to Node, and of these two little comics that speak to each other, cartoons, and at the end the guy goes, "You idiot, you've subscribed to the Church of Technology fashion," and he's right. I mean, how many of you remember a technology called Clipper? Yeah, we used to get stuff done on Clipper. Delphi? Yeah. MongoDB, .NET, Ruby, JavaScript, Node, Rails. I mean, technologies are coming out day by day, right? Then we have, I always like the one of the version control one, right? Who used to use CVS? Right, now you don't. Who used to use Subversion? Now you don't. You all use Git or Mercurial, right? Who used to use Visual Source Safe? My condolences. That is, someone used to always say that Visual Source Safe is good for teams of less than one person. And it is very, very true. Right? And then the same with unit testing and everything, right? And we get, subjected to this social and peer pressure. Oh, you still using Subversion? No way. It's Git, man. Git, where is that? Right? Oh, poor sod. He's still on Delphi. What, are you doing Java now? Java? No way. Java's so, old now. I'm doing Ruby. Of Ruby no longer, right? I'm doing JavaScript. Well, not even JavaScript, CoffeeScript. CoffeeScript is like where the cool kids are. Yeah. Right? No, it's not. No, it's not. Do you ask actually those technical questions, that the non-technical questions of what adopting new technologies will mean to you? If it comes out of your pocket, if it comes out of your paycheck, Do you consider that? No, you see, we're going to switch everything from CouchDB to MongoDB or to whatever DB because it's so much better. Right. Would you put your own money on the line for that? Would you? Well, we're going to gain a 0.05% increase. What about all that ramp-up time? What about all that time that we spend learning this? Does that outweigh what we're going to get? What about all of the legacy that we leave behind? Oh, I'm not using JUnit anymore, I'm using JBehave. No, not JBehave anymore, TestNG. Oh, because TestNG is great. Okay. What about the benefits versus the next guy that comes along has to now understand 10 different unit testing frameworks? Do you really ask that question and wonder, do I actually get that much benefit? It is great that advances are made. It is great that new technologies come out that solve issues. But do we ever try and balance whether what the problem they're solving outweighs the disadvantages that it leaves behind? Of course not, because we gain new knowledge. It's great for us. Oh, great, I get to work on Mongo today. Oh, great, I get to work on TestNG tomorrow. I'm going to learn a new thing. Great for my CV. Screw the company, screw the people that come after me. Not saying that we all do. Not saying that we say it so obviously, but do we think about that? Or do we just concentrate on what is good for us, what we should learn, what is our goal in life, as opposed to what we should actually be doing? So anyway, I'm through with complaining. I'm not through with the session. Sit down. And the thing is that if you think about it, we have a really, really challenging profession. I always put this sample, but this applies to pretty much everything. This is a factory worker, right? And not to demote factory workers, or this applies to many, many professions. These people go to work every single day. And every single day, they do the exact same thing. Every single day. Every single day, they do the same thing. The highlight of their work life might be that they go to a different department. But they always end up doing repetitive tasks over and over again. And this applies to many professions. And yet we have this amazing profession that every day we go to work, we are challenged with new things. We look at work on an enterprise system, we say, oh God, he gets to work on the new database and he gets to work with the new coffee script and I'm stuck here with plain old Java having to fix bugs. Instead of thinking that that bug is a challenge. That is going to solve a problem that's going to help someone. Every day we are in a position that we get to learn one way or another by improving things, right? See, very few professions have the ability to impact people's lives like we do. Whether we work on medical systems that saves lives, whether we work on research and development that's going to aid people with disabilities. Even if you're working in an enterprise system that helps people, that makes someone's job less mundane, that makes someone's job easier, more automated, these are the valuable things. These are where we should be concentrating and trying to provide value. How to improve people's lives. That's what our focus should be. How to make it easier for people. Innovation is that. It's how we can change people's lives. It's not about a specific technology, a framework, a language, a tool. And some reason we have this obsession with lol cats. And I came to the conclusion that there's an actual article that says that cats are diagnosed as prima donnas. But my point is that you should stop trying to chase the silver bullet. You should stop trying to chase that next technology, that next process, that next thing that's going to solve your problem. Because it is not about the process. It is not about the tools that you use. And it is not about us. Okay? So don't lose focus. Thank you. If you think I'm going to answer questions right now, you're mistaken.